All right. Well, I'm expecting that a few more folks will probably join us, but we're going to get started. I don't want to, use up more of your time than we need to. But I appreciate everybody hopping on today. This is Missouri Public Transit Association's virtual roundtable event, Agencies on the Move in Missouri. So this is an opportunity to, share ideas, policies, opportunities, challenges that agencies, rural, urban, small, large, are going through. Good learning opportunity, best practices, different things that people are dealing with. So before we pop in, we're going to have three of you, and you know who you are, give introductory remarks to kind of kick us off. But before we do that, I'd like to just kind of have everyone introduce themselves quickly for everybody here today, and then people that might join the recording later and for whatever reason might not be familiar with you. So let's start with Tom.
Hi guys, Tom Garand. I'm the executive director with the Kansas City Streetcar Authority, and happy to be here today.
Matt, I'll do you next.
Matt Crawford, City Utilities of Springfield, Director of Transit.
Denny?
Yes, good afternoon. Denny Ward, Executive Director for SMTS.
Tracy?
Tracy Jones, Director of Finance for SMTS.
Dorothy?
Dorothy Yeager, Executive Director for Oates Transit.
Cindy?
Cindy Baker, KCATA in Kansas City.
Thanks. David?
Multimodal planner for Ozarks Transportation Organization, and here to learn.
Thanks, David. And Teresa?
Teresa Lee, I'm Executive Director of Boones Lake Regional Planning Commission, and we manage the MoRides program.
All right, thanks so much. All right, well, I appreciate everyone joining us today for this lunch hour virtual roundtable. To kick things off, we wanted to give a few of our member agencies the opportunity to share some updates and opportunities, challenges, different things that they have going on to kind of kick us off. So Denny, I'm going to give you the floor to kind of start that out if you want to give some updates from SMTS.
Certainly. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and always a pleasure to be in the presence of such a great group of people. Southeast Missouri Transportation we're rebounding really well from the whole COVID thing. It's taken time, and I know other agencies have experienced the same thing. Hiring has gotten a little easier. I say that as we struggled with some interviews today, but it does happen, and we are happy to have the new people on board with us. Our number of rides are going up, still not exactly where we want to be, but they are increasing. Our funding revenue and streams are staying good. We have good working relationships with our partners in transit, and happy to have them as well. Probably the biggest news here is my retirement, which will be happening on July 1. That brought with it a lot of consideration on how do you handle that, and is that where you want me to go with this at this point, Travis? So.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if you could kind of shed some light on, I know we've talked about in the past succession planning and how different agencies kind of chart a path forward, but yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it's important that we all address succession planning, and we did that a few years ago by just asking each one of our key employees to present us with a timeline for what they were thinking as far as a retirement date went. And then we put that into their employee chart and kept that in mind, that we would be needing to address those things as they became evident to us. I reached out to our board almost 2 years ago to let them know that this would be my plan, that I would be retiring in 2024. And at that point in time, we generated a lot of discussion about how does our internal structure look, and do we have people that we can elevate within the organization, which I think is always key. You've got people who are trained, experienced, knowledgeable, and we should be pulling them up through the ranks as we mature into our positions as well. And we were strategically in a good spot for that. We had a couple of candidates who were interested and definitely qualified. We went through the process of interviewing and assessing their skill sets and looking at long-term range, where their focus was at and where their abilities would be, and settled on Tracy as my replacement. And she's doing an excellent job in that transition. And by doing so, we pulled our financial assistant up to director of finance and our fleet manager into the director of operations position, and then brought a pairing for him underneath our operations to create a strong management team. We'll bring some entry-level people in to pick up some residual positions, and it's all working well.
It's great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that update, and I will definitely have some follow-up questions later on for everybody, but that's great. Next, I'm gonna give Tom the floor. Tom, I know you guys have some expansion projects going on with KC Streetcar, Riverfront, Main Street. Love to hear about what you all have going on.
Yeah, so we've got a lot going on, as you indicated, Travis, in Kansas City, and I've got a few slides, but I'm gonna refrain from boring you guys with them unless you want some with regards to the projects that we're working on. But obviously, our focus post-COVID has really been downtown. How do we bring back ridership, bring back downtown, and we're just about 100% recovered from post-COVID declines, and which is great. We're actually exceeding post-COVID numbers on the weekends. We're a little shy during the weekday with downtown employment slower to come back, but we're averaging I think over 5,000, 6,000 trips a day on our little 2-mile route downtown. So interest has been great, and obviously the focus has been not just bringing back downtown service, but growing the system. So as mentioned, we've got 2 projects we're moving in parallel through different federal programs and different partners. I see Cindy on ATA's a huge partner in both of our efforts. I'll start first with the Main Street extension. That's our big CIG funded New Starts project. It's $350 million leveraged new special district funding, local funding to capture about $200 million in federal money through a variety of sources. We're about 83% constructed on that Main Street extension. So it's a 3.5-mile extension of the system from Union Station, if you're familiar, south through Midtown, the Plaza, and connecting UMKC on the southern end. Really mimicking the Main Street Max that the ATA deployed back in 2005 and ultimately really outlived its useful life. So an upgrading of transit service on Main Street and transitioning to sort of dedicated revenue stream to support growing the pie and leveraging a lot of federal money. So Main Street's nuts. If you've been in Kansas City, all the construction happening, it's going to be a really exciting summer. We're going to start seeing the completion of overhead power lines and station infrastructure. So it's going to start feeling real. It's been 3 years really of utility and then track and systems construction. So it's going to start feeling like a real project, and we'll actually be testing cars on the extension alignment by the end of this year. So, which is a huge milestone with the 2025 opening, probably mid-25. We're thinking at the moment, we haven't communicated a public date. As you know how these things go, there are a lot of federal regulation and safety and security startup certification processes we got to go through. But we're making really good progress, and it'll be great to have fewer cones on Main Street and moving that thing forward. So that project, the city, Kansas City, Missouri is our federal grantee on that, and it's a 3-party partnership between the Streetcar Authority, the ATA, and the city. So we're, again, with that extension, we're also getting 8 new streetcar vehicles. So we're growing our fleet from what started at 4 is now at 6, ultimately to 14. So we'll have 14 vehicles, and we're building a large scale expansion of our facility at the same time. And then on the other end, we broke ground just a few months ago on our Riverfront extension that'll connect the River Market north about 3/4 of a mile to Berkeley Riverfront Park. And you may have heard about the Casey Current Women's Soccer Stadium that's been built down there and just recently opened this year. We've got a few thousand residential units developed and many thousands more, and just another big, huge $800 million development plan that was announced for the terminus location of where the streetcar and the soccer stadium sort of coexist. And so that's been a really different and kind of neat project. When ATA actually and Cindy's team thankfully agreed to be the designated recipient on this project. So we've got two different extensions with two different designated recipients, all marching towards an expansion of this system, this unified system that will ultimately be one line about 7 miles end to end. So we're going from 2.2 to about 7 miles, and ATA has been a big, huge part of that, helping us move it forward. And so we're making progress of that project. It's trailing the Main Street project a little bit, but we think we'll be done building it late 25 and opened in 26. Early 26 is the target right now, sort of pre-World Cup for us in Kansas City. So we've got a lot happening on both ends and in the middle. And then behind the scenes of all of that, we're growing from a small little staff team of the downtown project of 30 folks to over 100 folks. So we're significantly growing the operations and maintenance capacity to support and sustain and operate and maintain the stuff that we're building. So we've got a lot happening with coordination with current downtown operations and the extension. And then we've got to staff up, obviously, to be able to support sustaining and running the operation once it's open. And Main Street could be opening just in a little over a year. So really steep climb, and as you guys can appreciate, hard time to fill empty positions. So we've had to do a lot of work on recruiting and relooking at wage rates and things like that to try to make sure we have the capacity and the expertise we need. So yeah, a lot of good things happening. There's other challenges, of course, from either whether it be local politics or scaling to do more as a region, not just streetcar, but on the ATA side, and Cindy can chime in too on some of that. So definitely not perfect world, but we've got some big things going and continue to move the needle and are excited about the next few years. We got a lot of work to do.
All right. Sounds like you guys have been busy over there in KC. Thanks for that update, Tom. I'm going to pass it over to Matt. We'd love to hear more about that comprehensive study that you all undertook and any other updates you want to touch on in Springfield.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to these things, Travis. So City Utilities moved into our new transit center in 2016, and just right at 8 years ago. And prior to that, the most recent service changes that we had, route changes, had been several years. So it's been 8 years, and we've not touched them since then. So it's been 8 years since we really made any major changes to our routes. Prior to that, the most recent study we had performed on our system was 2012. And that also included things like helping identify the location of our current transit center. And also the most recent fare structure change we had was in 2007. We'd gone from 75 cents for a basic single trip to $1.25 over the course of a couple of years. And then recently, the City of Springfield completed a comprehensive study for the city plan, and City Utilities Transit became a talking point for many of the areas of conversation: healthcare, housing, and transportation. And so we thought it was an appropriate time to go into a study to see what does the community expect from transit, and what are they willing to support from transit. So when we went into that, we went into a contract with Olson Associates, and we did a market analysis, we did an operational analysis, we benchmarked ourselves against a lot of agencies across the country, in particular throughout the Midwest. We held a bunch of stakeholder interviews, public engagement meetings, and one of the things we're really proud of is that we had over 400 different public engagements, which is really good for the Springfield area and government in Springfield. Out of that, we got 7 vision statements from Olson, things that people wanted for us, wanted from us. And the number one thing, they weren't ranked in any particular order other than the number one, and that was that public transit in Springfield should meet the needs of those who currently use the system. And then as we were looking at the recommendations that came from Olson, a couple more of them really resonated with us. One was to be easy, convenient, and intuitive to use, which we know is difficult in any transit agency. And then also to have a base level of coverage throughout Springfield. And so what we came up with was the contractor, Olson, gave us 3 options or 3 service recommendations. One was a short-term budget neutral recommendation where we take the number of the hours of service that we have and we would reallocate those across the system and planning to optimize the routes we currently have. Then we had a midterm solution that would involve some level of investment without too much investment, but some level of investment. And then there was a long-term plan. And so a budget neutral system would have us running somewhere around $12 million a year. A midterm plan had us running somewhere around $18 million a year with another $20 million in capital investment in buses and things like that. And then the long-term plan has an annual operating plan of about $45 million with capital investment of about $55 million. And that it was a serious investment. And so what the leadership here at City Utilities did was take a look at what can we do with what we have and what kind of intentional investment are we willing to make. And so I know to some agencies this is small, and percentage-wise it is a fairly small investment, but we run 1,417 hours of service a week on our fixed route system, and the utility leadership has allowed us an intentional investment of 29 additional hours, which means we're going to increase our bus operator headcount by at least 1, and it's going to allow us to do some things with our service. So currently we run service from 6 a.m. until 11 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and then 7 a.m. until 11 p.m. on Sunday. We're going to have an ending time Monday through Saturday at 10 p.m. We're just going to cut our service an hour earlier. Our ridership at 10 p.m. is very, very low. And then at our transit center, we have 8 routes that meet down there. 2 of those only serve once an hour, and they're not even on the same half an hour service. And so we're going to take all the routes that serve the transit center, and we're going to make them 30-minute service, put an investment in there. Moving some of those hours of service and investing our time at the transit center to make every route serve every 30 minutes. And then at night we switch to 4 routes instead of the 8 that are down there. And we're going to actually run all 8 of the routes that serve the transit center deep into the evening until 10 p.m. and do away with our night routes through the week. On Saturday, we're going to add, instead of switching to those same 4 routes that we run at night, we're going to stay with the same daytime routes that we serve Monday through Friday, and we'll serve those hourly on Saturday. So the service that we're going to run on Saturday is going to be the same service that we run on Monday, just with a different headway schedule. And then we've taken a couple of our northern loop routes and a couple of our southern loop routes that are underperforming or underutilized, and we've combined those into a little bit bigger loop. Still be able to run them on an hour headway, but we've combined them. We've been able to move some of those service hours to another time. Sunday, we're going to make a significant change. We currently only run 4 routes. We're going to continue to run those same 4 routes, but instead of running until 11 o'clock at night, we're going to run our service from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. We have very, very low ridership on Sunday. And in our public comment most recently to talk about our routes and our fares, we didn't get much feedback on that. We're also going to eliminate service on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Of all the things that we've done, this is one thing that I think is going to help us in our recruitment and retention. It has been noted in many interviews that people want that time. They want that work-life balance. This is one of the very few ways that we can provide that for potential bus operators. So when everything's added together, we are expecting around a $200,000 annual operating cost increase for City Utilities. there are a couple of estimates. It could be all in all, it could be about $1 million a total investment, but I think we're going to see closer to the $200,000 range. And then the last thing that they really looked at for us was our fares. And there's been a lot of discussion in our community, both on our Board of Public Utilities and our Utility Citizens Advisory Council and our City Council. They all want us to look at fare changes, do something that impacts the people that are using the system. And so there were 4 options that were brought to the table. One was do nothing. One was to increase fares. One was to remove fares altogether. And one was to reduce fares. And ultimately, the recommendation that the utility has been willing to take on and our board fully supported. Right to the end of our last presentation to the board, we had one board member that was just adamant it needed to be fair. And right before the very last meeting, he told us that I relent. He said, as long as you'll reduce fares, I will be satisfied that you're taking a step in the right direction. And I was really pleased with that. What we've been able to do is we're recommending a 20% fare reduction, and that will go before the Board of Public Utilities this summer and before our City Council. They're all aware, they've seen a presentation about this, which means our single fare will go to $1 from $1.25. The only thing that's going to increase is going to be the cost of that transfer. It's going to go from 10 cents to 25 cents. And that's really to make sure that we're covering the cost of the fare media that we use for those transfers. Other than that, all of our fare structure will be dropping by about 20%. And we are expecting somewhere around $160,000 in fare revenue decrease based on these numbers, but we also expect ridership to go up based on a lower fare. So pretty excited about that. And then for us, the next steps are just we have to get approval from the City Council, from our Board of Public Utilities to take care of that fare. But alongside this, we're actually implementing a new ITS system. We're replacing our current Route Match ABL system with TripSpark, both on our fixed route and our paratransit side. We're also looking at replacing our fare boxes at the end of the year, beginning of next year. And we've just got a lot of things going on here that we're excited about. And this study has made it possible to really get things rolling in the right direction for us.
All right, that's great. Thanks, Matt, for that update. I have several questions, but I'll hold them for a minute. So I want to bring everyone together into the discussion. I really appreciate Denny, Tom, and Matt giving us updates on what's going on in your neck of the woods, because I think it's really informative in 3 very different situations to hear what's going on. One thing that I wanted to bring up, make sure that I ask, probably not a surprise, but the 3rd year in a row we've seen a win from state funding, right? This year is a little different than last year in that we were kind of playing defense, and it was a much quieter ask in terms of, hey, let's not rock the boat with all that's going on in Jeff City. I think things will probably get a little more difficult in the future as state revenue goes down and maybe the budget gets a little tighter, and we might have to, think about strategy. But, it's a win to celebrate, but also we want to make sure that we have an understanding and folks in Jeff City have an understanding of the impact that this funding has. So I'd love to hear from all of you about, how does that state funding, impact your operations and decisions that you're making, now and going forward? And I mean, I could ask, is it enough? We know the answer to that, but yeah, I'll let you take it from there. Who wants to jump in?
I think I can start, and not to sound ungrateful, one of the challenges for us when we talk about state funding is the fact that we can't count on that state funding to be available next year. And so we can't program the money for specific things. We really can use it to offset our current cost. And it's much appreciated because some of the costs that we can offset are things that cost us more today than they did yesterday. And so for us, we're not tax based. We're based on the utility and what the utility is willing to support and what the community wants the utility to support. And so it offsets some of the costs that are borne by our other customers at the utility. But if we could get to a very solid funding mechanism, it could change what we can do with that money.
Yeah, I
that
would
makes
just
sense.
reinforce, definitely a welcomed, sort of additional infusion. It's not, moving the needle from, an overall financial perspective. As Matt said, we can't depend on it or program or budget against it per se. We're now just into our FY25, but already working on our FY26 budget for the organization. So we're, not in a position to assume, what we'll receive. But it's definitely, it frees up other local resources that then obviously we can redeploy, if needed, if we have some capacity to do some things that we would like to do. So, definitely welcome. And again, as Matt said, I think if we could get to a longer term, pretty more predictable arrangement, right? The impacts are obviously, the order of magnitude matters, but the impacts of what we can do programmatically, become more significant. I will say this: we did secure, just so you guys are aware, we secured $1 million effectively earmarked in the last budget for planning work from the state, the compliments of our state senators and legislators. So to continue to move our conversations about the next phase, the next generation of expansion projects forward. So outside of the formula distribution, we were successful in getting a little additional state funds, which we didn't frankly anticipate, which was a welcome surprise. So again, I think there's, never would have assumed that would have been possible a few years ago, particularly coming from again, an urban metro in Kansas City. But we were able to do that. And I think hopefully it bodes well for the state as a whole and continue to show some progress on some of our system initiatives and build more support as a state, for making the case that, there's a need, not just obviously, we need to operate and maintain the systems, but we as a state need to be thinking to the future. And how are we leveraging public transportation and transportation like we do roadways and highways, right, to drive our economy and to grow our cities and connect our folks. So, good sign there. We'll see if we should all have legislative requests outside of the formula requests. I would that would be my recommendation. If you're not talking to your delegation of senators, and representatives, you might think about something outside of the formula. What would you ask for? And see if there's an opportunity. We'll see if the state, obviously, hopefully remain in strong financial standing, but you never know. We did not foresee that coming.
Interesting.
I would have said the exact same thing that Matt and Tom said. We really appreciate it. It's very helpful. But not knowing if it's going to be there in future years makes it really difficult to budget and plan for. And, you can ramp up and you can get the employees and the vehicles, but not knowing that will be there makes it a little worrisome that you might have to, back off a little bit down the road or sell vehicles or decrease your workforce or decrease routes. And that's hard to explain to people, that when the funding goes back down, or if it did, how do we provide that service?
Sure. Dorothy, what about you over there?
Well, I agree. It's hard to long-term strategic plan, based on the whims of the legislature. But I will tell you, from our perspective, the increase in that state assistant was a godsend as we transitioned off of the COVID relief funds that required no match. Many of our funding partners that we rely on for match, they don't have the local cash that they used to. And so the state assistance has helped us fill some of those local gaps and helped us to not have to go to our funding partners and double their rates. We were able to keep our rates in line with inflation and not do an extreme hike in rates the last couple of years.
That's Great. Yeah, I mean, I think, as we go forward, thinking about these wins in funding are great, but obviously, and we want to continue to tell the story about the impact that those have had, but also that lack of predictability is important in terms of, multiplying the effect of it. So that's something that we want to keep in mind moving forward. And as we tell the story, you know, and Jeff City, that is impactful. Anyone else want to hop in on the state funding or other funding opportunities that have been out there?
Travis, I do have a question for Tom. In his comments, he said something about earmarks and encouraging every group to be involved or working towards those. Tom, so we're part of a municipal utility, and I know that we balance our needs compared to other projects within the utility, similar to how we approach when we go to grants or competitive grants. We go when we have the greatest need and when we can tell the greatest story, but we also compare to what is the local match going to be for the utility financially, and then also what's happening within our Chamber of Commerce, if you will, or within our region, who else is asking for what. Do you try to balance those kinds of things as well, like with KCATA or other organizations in your area?
Matthew, we don't have the same kind of organizational pressure that you have, because we're singularly focused on what we're doing with our streetcar system. And to be honest with you, I sort of got a request late in the process, just from our relationships. We historically haven't had a super robust or well-coordinated state agenda, right, around transit appropriations or earmarks, because nothing existed right outside of the Piddly formula, which again, we're supportive of growing. So I think it maybe is a suggestion for something for us to ponder. We probably need to give more thought to how we're coordinating, and do we have a shared list? We do it in other programs on the federal side, right, where we're grant, national discretionary programs. All of our streetcar stuff is done in coordination with City of Kansas City and ATA. On the state side, we just haven't been as proactive or aggressive because the opportunities hadn't been there until recently. So, but it suggests maybe we should have a more intentional strategic state strategy outside of the formula funding. And we don't want to distract from that, right? I would say that funding of operations and maintenance of core services should be continue to be the highest priority and emphasis for MPTA. But is there another layer for additional resources to either bolster that pot or to do special projects or what have you, that we can coordinate on? And again, talk about not just operating and maintaining, but what's the future of transit in the state of Missouri, and what's the state's role in helping us get there? So yeah, I think a little bit of a lesson learned for us on that. Caught us by surprise, honestly.
Well, it's a good surprise. We can continue to talk about money, but I did want to, I was mentioning, I think, to Tom earlier before everyone got on, I was at the Apta Mobility Conference in Portland, and they were mentioning kind of different like peaks in ridership and different, riders are using their trips for different reasons. They might be riding at different times of day. I would love to hear from whoever wants to start it off. First of all, how's your ridership looking, maybe compared to pre-COVID, as far as building back up? But how has it, changed anywhere from the just straight numbers, but also, what are you hearing in terms of why are people using it or how they're using it in a different way, if you are?
Yeah, I'll start and just say, kind of mentioned this early on, Travis. We've always had a non-traditional sort of ridership profile relative to nights and weekends being heavier than traditional commute. We're downtown focused. We're driven by a third of our trips are employment based, 2/3 are not, and that 2/3 grows significantly on the weekends when we have special events and other things. So last week, for instance, we had a number of days of 5,000 trips, and we had a Saturday with 14,000 trips. triple our average annual weekday. I would say overall with COVID, we've seen a shift to non-work trips. And so kind of reinforcing nights and weekends, the weekday has been slower to recover. We've seen greater than 100% recovery on weekends, and frankly, even in evenings, we're seeing more activity. So it does reinforce, obviously, I think, looking ahead, the more trip purposes we can serve as a system, so that speaks to hours and reach and frequency. Obviously, the more diversified our ridership base is, and the more we can do. So, but yeah, we've seen downtown employment slower to come back compared to some of the other sectors of ridership that we're focused on. Still strong, and we're close to just under 100% total recovery, over 100% on the weekend.
Interesting. Who else? Dorothy, Denny, I'm interested in how maybe your ridership has changed or why people ride and all that good stuff.
Well, I'll jump in here. We do scheduled and advanced transportation, so it's very structured. And we are in our long-term strategic plan, we're trying to figure out how we can provide more same-day service in some of the rural communities. I don't know if Denny and Tracy have attempted any of this, because we're getting some feedback that people want same day service. They want more flexibility in their transportation. They don't want to have to call between the hours of 9 and 2, ask for Debbie, and schedule for their trip 2 weeks from now. That's kind of an old-fashioned way of doing things. And people now have mobile apps, and they want same day service, and they don't want to ride the Oats bus all day. They want to jump on, go to their appointment, and get back home. And so we're trying to wrap our arms around that and see how that works in a rural environment where you do have long distances, where you often don't have resources in the community, so they have to travel long distances to get to doctors or grocery. Denny, Tracy, are you experiencing some of those new demands?
I would say yes, for sure, on the technology piece. I think the way we process, the way we schedule is definitely gonna change. We're gonna start looking at some software and stuff to make it a little more easy on our end, but also give the potential for, phone apps and things like that for people to schedule. As far as same day service, we do have some demand for that. In some of our counties, we stay pretty booked up. Sometimes we're several days or a couple weeks out. So that does make it hard. I do know that, conversations with our coordinators, when we have somebody call in and they want the same day service, if it's something that's reasonable and we can fit it in, we just try to encourage them to call in advance just to help our scheduling a little better. But I agree with you. I mean, the generations are changing and we need to adapt to that, give those people more flexibility on how they schedule, how they pay, things of that nature. And that's been difficult for us, which Dorothy, I'm sure you can relate to. You guys use is an Eco Lane, and it's very, very expensive. And unfortunately, SNTS couldn't afford that. And we're looking at some other options, and I think technology has come a long way, and I think that we're going to be able to find something, but finding something that can handle the rural transportation as opposed to inner city, because it's just a different way to document things, was more difficult to find that. So I do definitely see things changing. We see more of a demand. I feel like we've seen an increase in our NEMT. We've seen a lot more medical appointments. We don't get a whole lot of employment except for in some of our bigger areas like Rolla, maybe some in St. Francis County. Those are the areas where we actually do have a deviated fixed route, and that is helping on some of those issues.
Do you find that your technology, so the scheduling software you use, do you find that to be as limiting in your operation for those kinds of services as anything, even more so than maybe your ability to provide the service?
Oh, yeah, yeah. One, I can't report on it. I can't look at things analytically. If you asked me how many boardings we had that were medical compared, I would have to really go digging, probably draw out information, put some of it in Excel, do some comparatives in order to really get that level of things that I would really love to be able to see. Because we're using ad hoc things here and there. We use Excel for this, we use Google Sheets for, the coordinators to put things together, and we're using a Microsoft database. It's bits and pieces here and there. And I would love to be able to pull more data in and give better detail.
Which is why I'm leaving. I'm going to mail them a check. I'm going to send my request by the postmaster to come pick me up in 2 weeks.
Well, I will touch on that to say, and I'll probably plug the conference a couple more times, but I know we are having sort of a tech summit as part of the Missouri Transit Conference, and they are going to be talking about, scheduling software options and different things from the, rural transit provider perspective as well. So, and to touch on that, if there are vendors that you are at all interested in hearing from, just send me a note, if we haven't already reached out or they're not already participating, we want that to be a good opportunity. David, you got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry for joining late. I had a client meeting. I'm familiar with the technology component of the annual conference, but is there something specific about reporting? Because I think that's what I kind of heard Tracy focus on.
We're just limited in the amount of reporting that we can do because we have so many different systems we're utilizing for different pieces. It's not all inclusive for one, and we're still using paper trip sheets.
Well, I think that'll be. Oh, go ahead.
Perhaps a peer roundtable on that topic alone, because I mean, of all the clients we work with, they all are challenged with reporting. We generate a lot of information as transit agencies, but we're, what is it? Information rich and data poor, I think is the phrase, right? So you've got all this information, but getting access to it and pulling it into reports and pulling insights from that can be a challenge, just like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think we have at least one session in the conference where we've got kind of actual in-person roundtables on different topics. We can either touch on that or we can do another one of these just on that. I think that's a good idea, David. Chuck, Cindy, any thoughts on ridership levels or just changing, kind of the perceptions of how people are utilizing your systems in St. Louis, Kansas City?
So, if I may, I
Absolutely.
find this very interesting because everything that everybody has talked about, we've got that too. We've got at least a problem in all of those areas. It's interesting. We, prior to the pandemic, we were providing over 40 million boardings per year. And since then, we lost about 50% of our ridership during COVID. And it started coming back like 6% a year, for the last couple of years. We find ourselves right now with a capacity issue because we lost a number of operators of all types, bus operators, caller ride operators. So we're going through a point now where we had to kind of shrink our system, pull back, especially on paratransit service, and that's a whole problem in itself. So we've spent the last year really trying to rebuild our staffing. So the service that we've been able to provide has been limited by the number of our staffing. So what we're doing now, and we've been very successful, we're probably up to budgeted capacity on bus drivers now, but it takes a while to get them back into the system. We had to reduce our footprint for Call a Ride because it's it's a complimentary service, and it's not ready to take on the role of filling the footprint. So we really can't expand service until we fix the paratransit part as well. So right now we're focusing on better service, more reliable service, limiting the amounts of the number of denials or missed trips and things like that. So we're focusing, we're going to be in that mode probably for the rest of this year at least. And then at the same time, I'm short 70, 50, 70 paratransit operators. So we're focusing on that right now. Again, trying to recruit and retain, which has been an issue. But of course, along with that, it goes a shortage of mechanics. So, I'm looking for mechanics. I've hired all these new bus operators and they're wrecking my buses, so just a combination of things, this phase that we're going through right now. But I see a light at the end of the tunnel. You were talking about, especially for our paratransit service, we're trying to figure out new solutions as it relates to software for booking trips, phone systems, to expedite that. Of course, the drivers, we're trying to try different things. We're trying to do a next day service, call in, that kind of thing. Did a survey on that. They hated it. So we're looking for alternatives to that. So we're in the mix right now of recovery. Our ridership changed. Our ridership pre-pandemic was focused on people coming to work downtown. Nobody works downtown anymore. So the ridership patterns have changed. So all of these things are in play right now. And frankly, it's a very interesting time in St. Louis to be in this business. And I am planning my retirement as well. So
it's a common theme here today.
Lot of things. So I'll just throw that out there.
Well, I'm still working downtown, Chuck, so I'm still hopping on and riding in, but not as many. Cindy, how about Kansas City?
I think we could echo many of the storylines we heard today. I think some of our ridership has bounced back, but don't forget we have zero fare. So I think the ridership continues to stay steady, and it was probably more steady during COVID than most agencies. We're kind of just like, I think St. Louis, really working on ride quality. We are needing to improve the service. We have done a great job, I believe, of recruiting operators and mechanics. We're getting all of our service out on the street now. We just celebrated. We're kind of only whispering it a little bit because you can't really maintain this bar, but we had 99% of our trips get out in April. So we're like thrilled. However, it's not going to stay. It can't possibly stay at 99%, I don't think. But we still have, and if anybody, pays much attention on social media, we still have ride issues on time, performance. Our apps don't necessarily do exactly what they're supposed to do. So we are trying to make some improvements. So we have 60% of our riders have no other choices. So they are not always tied into the app, and they're waiting and they're not, I don't know. So we are trying to focus on improving customer experience from the get-go throughout the entire journey, to getting to the destination. And we've started kind of on a customer task force, an amenities task force. We're trying to spruce up our stops, which are in desperate need of some help and some love. So yeah, I think we feel everyone's pain on here, and we're struggling through our own struggles, even if ridership may not be it, but certainly the ridership has changed. The type of riders who are riding, And we're struggling through our issues with zero fare. Our board is trying to deal with whether we're going to continue that or not going into 25. Certainly the COVID funding is gone, so we're looking for that replacement. So that affects all of our ridership and our ability to gain new riders and keep our current ones.
All right. Thanks for that update. You know, all of this kind of brings to mind, you know, as ridership change, you know, has fluctuated and how people are using systems. I'm kind of wondering if everyone could speak at least a little bit to how you gauge what riders want, how you get feedback from your riders and the community, and, you know, successes or challenges you've seen with that. I mean, Matt, I think you all had a great opportunity with your comprehensive plan to kind of reach out to the community and you know, 400 instances of that. I mean, can you speak, maybe start us off to how much, was it easy? Was it challenging to get feedback from people and get people involved in telling you about the system?
It took an effort, for sure. A lot of that was handled by Olson in the study, and then we've done a follow-up public meeting at our transit center where we just posted information at a few of our key bus stops, and then on the buses and at the transit center. We had about 40 comments in one day, against 400 comments across 3 or 4 weeks. We were really pleased with that as well. So it's just a matter of getting engaged, and we've got to get out of our offices, out of our seats, and actually get out and meet our passengers where they are. And most commonly, where we can get most of them is at the transit center. So that it was a little bit difficult, but it was definitely worth the effort. The other thing is we engage with our transit advisory committee, I think most agencies are supposed to have something like that. We engage with them, and then we follow up on all that customer feedback that we get, and take the information we're getting from our bus operators as well. So we have a lot of avenues to collect information if we just take action on it and pay attention to what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's great. Anyone else want to jump on, you know, how you get feedback from riders and, you know, challenges, opportunities?
We just
Sure.
completed. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Tom. No, Tom, I was going to throw it to you, actually.
Yeah, we kind of piggyback, but using a similar methodology, and just completed a rider satisfaction survey. It was pretty detailed and robust. You're really piggybacking on the same structure and format that the ATA uses on the broader system. So that gives us really good data on what's important to riders, on trip purpose, on satisfaction levels, on things that we could do better, that we need to focus on. So we lean into that heavily to help us decide, you know, one, understand what's the relative priority for folks, and two, how are we doing on that, and are there things that we need to do differently to move the needle. We've been fortunate with strong satisfaction, but sort of really wanting to baseline trip purpose. We think obviously, you know, as our geography grows, you know, our trip function is going to change significantly. The share of trips from, you know, downtown, you know, entertainment to work trips to residential, you know, sort of trips will change. So building some good data on the front end of where we are now and how that evolves as we grow, so we can adjust services appropriately to sort of serve those evolving needs. Because it's going to look, our function of our system is going to change pretty radically over the next 24 months. And that is on the website. I think we posted it on the website if anybody wants to see the detailed reports.
Anyone else want to jump on customer feedback? All right, well, we're getting a little short on time. And I wanted to, we somehow didn't touch on staffing levels a ton, which is crazy, right? But I think it sounds like people are having more luck, you know, getting closer to full staffing. I wonder if we could just touch on really quick how retention has looked recently. Is that still an issue? Obviously, you know, maybe some of the prerequisites for hiring people have changed. Maybe there's, you know, buses are having a few more issues. Can anyone speak to what retention has, you know, looked like? And if there's anything you're doing to combat that? Obviously, Matt, you talked about the holidays.
Sure, we're looking at those kinds of things we can do. What we did have some fairly high turnover over the last 18 months. That has really calmed down in the last 6 months. I'd say 6 to 9 months. We've had that really settle down. I think part of that is without saying that we didn't get quality candidates, but I do believe that the pool that we're able to draw from is much deeper, and we're just getting more applicants, and we have more options when we're hiring people.
Yeah, I'll say our issue hasn't really been retention. It's just been, we've got a lot of new positions to fill. And I talked about the growth from sort of 30 to 100 over 24 months. So, and they're all, on the streetcar side, it's a lot of on-the-job training, as it is obviously with most of our transit jobs in general, but mechanics and, even operators are unique. So, yeah, we've had to reevaluate our pay scale. So we've got a contract operator and a labor agreement that provided a lot of protections for us in terms of costs, controlling costs over the term of our agreement. What we found was, with the shifting marketplace, we needed to be more competitive in certain areas, beyond, frankly, what was the minimum requirement, what were the requirements of the pay ranges in the original agreement. So we had to do some proactive adjustments there through our O&M contract provider to make sure the positions were, sufficiently competitive, which I know we're all battling.
Chuck,
We
did you have something?
we found that retention was probably as big a problem as attraction was. Even as we were giving out $5,000 sign-on bonuses, people were still leaving. Okay. So we've renegotiated all of our labor contracts within the last year. And we did not really give huge wage increases, but we gave things that made it more sticky to stay here, like 401k contributions and those kind of things. We started paying people for doing the work that we need them to do, like nights and weekends and our priority routes. So it's been a combination of things. We revamped all of our training programs to make them more welcoming, more commitment on our part to making sure that people made the transition into the company. We started a mentorship program, which has been beyond our wildest dreams, that we could get our existing operators to volunteer to be mentors, and they like it, but they see that, we're in this together. The future of this company is dependent upon us all working together. They saw this new group of people. They said, "Oh man, they are different. They are different. We need to really take them under our wing and show them how to operate in this company." So that's really helped us as much as our hiring efforts, the ability to retain people, not only the ones that we already have, but also the new ones that we're bringing in. You got to stay a year to get that $5,000. And we were still getting people walking out the door, in 3 weeks. So we had to fix all of those things.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I don't want to keep you too far past the time, but one last thing. Denny, I got to throw it over to you. And I want to say personally, thanks for everything that you've done. And I know the time I've been here at MPTA, you've been incredibly helpful. Congratulations on your career. And just the one question I have for someone who is not planning their retirement yet is, what are you going to miss the most about your job?
I'm going to miss, excuse me, I'm going to miss the people. We do a lot every single day to help so many. And there's never a week that goes by that we're not reminded of how we've benefited the communities that we serve. And I will miss that piece. It's important. What we do is extremely important. And I will, even though I won't be in the transit agency, I will constantly be reminding our elected officials how important that this service is.
Well, I think that's a great one to end it on for us all to think about as we go through the rest of our week. But
Thank you.
thanks again, Denny, and thanks everybody
You're
for
welcome.
joining us today. And I'll be sending out some information in the recording, but really appreciate everybody participating and sharing info, and look forward to the next one of these.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.